Hey, Read Through the Word. Today's February 14th. Today's lesson is called Outside the Tent. I am taking a look at where we stand with Moses at the end of this book. So let's look with our reading. It says that after, we're going to talk about this too, but it says in verse 30, chapter 40 of Exodus, verse 34 and 35. It says this: Then the cloud covered the tabernacle, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could no longer enter the tabernacle, but the cloud had settled down over it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. So that's what we're going to look at with our lesson today, of what all we've been through in the book of Exodus, where we stand right now, and some things we want to learn. So here's what's interesting. First, let's just talk about this whole reading today. Isn't it very interesting? Maybe it's just me. I mentioned this to Wendy, that can you just imagine? I said all of this stuff that everybody's done to get the tabernacle ready, and Moses by himself sets up the whole thing. And can you just see him? I mean, the thing's huge. And he's climbing and putting poles up and doing, and he's just all over the place. I just think it'd be very interesting to have seen what that looked like, to see Moses climbing all over and putting everything together for the tabernacle. So that's just me thinking, wow, wouldn't I love to see that? I always say, I want to see that when we get to eternity, that we have film strips. Like, I love for us to, like when you were in school, and some of you might be a whole lot younger than me, but back in my day, with big projectors with the film strips on them, and got real excited when the teacher would bring the film strip in, and got to watch something in school that day. It was long before videotapes and all of that. And we got to see all that. And I would love that does God have home movies? Like, does he have this recorded where we could actually see it happen? And I think about that a lot. That's, just me thinking I would love to see that. What did it really look like? So I always say God's home movies. That's what the Bible is, the written record. And I would just love to see it. So I'd love to see Moses climbing all over and setting up the tabernacle. But here's what's really interesting. We stand with Moses outside the tabernacle. And we're going to discuss what that means, where we go forward with this. But I want us to first take pause and take a look at where we are as far as at the end of the book of Exodus. We stand at such a different place than we did at the beginning of the book. So as we close out a book of the Bible, to take a look at what we're looking at. We began our book in bondage in Egypt, where we're introduced to Moses, and then what we've gone through the plagues, we've gone through getting everything set up, and here we are. And so we've made this journey, and now we stand as with Israel, watching to see what's going to happen next. That they've made this journey into the wilderness to Sinai to learn what it is to be the people of God, how to worship him. And God wants to dwell with his people. He's made this dwelling place amongst them, that he's going to be with them, and gets everything set up, and the glory of God fills the tabernacle. And Moses, after all that climbing and everything else he's done, he can't go in anymore. He's not able to go in because the glory of the Lord has filled the tabernacle. Moses and the people have followed. It's one of the rare times, every time you see that in the book of Exodus, where it says, and they did exactly as God commanded. You're like, wow, because we're not going to see that a whole lot more as they wander around. That they did everything God told them to do. They did. With the construction and set up everything. God desires, we talked about this when we talked about dwell last week. God desires to dwell with his people, but this is what's happening. Moses can no longer enter in because here we are with the big problem. Moses is a sinner. God cannot allow Moses, if Moses were to enter the presence of God, enter to the tabernacle, it would require his immediate judgment for his sin. If God desires to dwell with his people, which he's proven to us he has throughout the Bible so far, and we talked about that a lot the other day, but if he desires to dwell with his people, then there needs to be something done to make that possible, because right now it's not. Were Moses to step 1 foot into the tabernacle, he's struck dead immediately as the consequences of his sin, because God in his holiness cannot allow the sin into his presence, or it requires immediate judgment. Immediate judgment. So what can happen to make this possible? So God will then now start to teach his people, how is this possible? How is it possible for a holy God to be in the midst of his people? And what he's going to teach them, what it requires for his presence to be with them. What does it require? God will give his people ways that will act as a temporary atonement, a payment, so they could be ritually clean, so his people could dwell alongside his presence. He's going to teach them what it means to be his people set apart. What does it mean? How can a holy God dwell with sinful people? How is that possible? I mean, at all. How can he, because what we're going to watch as they continue their journey, and he tells them where to go and when to go with the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, that he will always, and we talked about this last week with dwell, he will always be in the center of this people. How can he be surrounded on all sides by so much sin? How's that possible? What makes this even something that people outside the tent are even struck dead because of being that close to the presence of God? How is it possible? And that's what we're going to look at as we continue moving. So we're going to talk about in the coming days everyone's favorite book, Leviticus. And I'll go into a little bit more detail with a lot of these things. But I want us to think as we continue to go forward, as we look, as we close out the book of Exodus, and we see where we started with the Israelites, where we in now, as okay, we got set free from everything. We've gone through this. We've learned who God is. We've learned of his holiness and our sinfulness, and he wants to dwell with us. Now, what's next? What's next? And that's what he does, is that we follow along with Israel through the book of Exodus as we make the same journey. One of the great delights of looking at the whole counsel of God, the Old Testament and the New Testament, how they interact, how everything, is to pick up on things like this. So, I've said this, I don't know if you've heard me say, you might be new here. Anybody that's been in a classroom with me hears me continually say this, but the Old Testament gives us many physical pictures for things that we will then learn as spiritual truths in the New Testament, a way for us to understand some things. God does that a lot. That's why he gives us marriage, to give us a picture of the church. He gives us so many different things to help us learn. If we just would open our eyes to see that everything he's given us in this world, even the world around us, is to teach us something about him. But the Bible shows us these things acted out, Old Testament. So, as I want us to look to make this connection right here, as we look at Israel, the people group, they're not a nation yet. We won't become a nation till we get to the book of Joshua. But as we make this journey with them, and we see this physical journey they're on out of the bondage of slavery, into learning to know who God is. What does it mean to be his people? And then what does it mean to live like his people? Every bit of that is the journey we're on now. So I want us to see that what we need to look at is that this journey they're going through, they've gone through the book of Exodus, and they will continue to go through in Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy to an extent, and we'll talk about that more when we get to Deuteronomy, is a physical picture of something you're already going through right now that we do on our journey, because we also have been redeemed, purchased. Remember, he redeemed them from slavery in Egypt. We have been redeemed from slavery to sin. We have been bought by him for his purpose, just like they were. We have that same thing. So if they've made this journey throughout the book of Exodus, and we make this, so we're making the same journey too. We have been redeemed from slavery. Our slavery was to sin. And we make this journey of what it looks like to live as the redeemed people of God. What does it look like to live as free people who do not understand freedom? That's what happens with Exodus, with the people of Israel. They don't know what it's like to live in freedom. That's why you keep seeing them do all these things. They're just like anybody, they're going to continue to test those boundaries because they're not used to that much freedom. It's just like us. It's just like us. And just as we watch this pilgrimage that they've made so that God can dwell with them, it's the same thing we're doing. We're making this pilgrimage through this life, this journey of what it's like to live as people set free from sin, knowing that our ending place is going to be eternity with him, dwelling with him. But here's the thing. We're not going to have to stand outside the tent. Moses did. We don't have to. We're going to get to be with him forever. But this is just a picture to us of what that's going to be like. So, they're going to learn a lot of lessons. So as we continue to watch them make this journey, I want you to pay attention, because the lessons that they learn on their journey are the ones that we need to learn too. So, pay attention as we keep going. And we'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.